Bola, you want to put OMCI like before reports and everything? We've never done that before. Oh, we're getting there, folks. We're almost like a real committee, almost a real board. I mean, we're not, but you know. Ready? All right, I'm going to call to order the April 11th Public Works meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Chairman Waggy.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Erger.
Here.
All
Great.
members are present.
Moving on to the agenda, one change I do want to make, and if you haven't refreshed, I'm trying to refresh. We want to move the OMCI item, which is, now I'm refreshing and I've lost it.
Old business item F.
Item F, we want to move that up just because we have the people online right now. If everybody was okay with that, we'll approve by acclamation. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll approve by acclamation. Okay. Bola, we're ready for the OMCI item?
On the Zoom line, we actually have the Executive Director, Brian Holscher, of MSD, as well as Bess McCoy, and I believe she is Manager of Public Affairs. So they sent us a survey, Proposition S and Proposition W passed, and basically we need to, there we go. Basically we need to figure out, do we want to keep the OMCI? So Prop S would provide us stormwater funds. OMCI currently provides a stormwater fund. So you have the ability to keep the OMCI turned on if you want it, at least that's one of the preferences you can announce to them, and then ultimately MSD will decide. We're in the Deer Creek watershed, so you've got other communities like Ladue, Maplewood, Webster Groves. So enough of us, I believe, have to agree that we want to keep it on or it goes off, and then it's only Prop S. So I'll let them speak to it since they know way more than I do.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
And somebody's on from MSD?
Brian and Bess are both on.
Do they have to be unmuted or made a presenter? Or?
There's Brian. We see you now.
Yes.
And Bess?
There we go.
Can you hear them? Hang on a minute.
We don't hear you yet. We're working on it.
Heard me?
Hey, Brian, can we hear you now?
Hear us, but we can't
We
hear him.
still can't hear you. We see you, though.
Had this before. Got it, Daniel?
Brian, can you talk? Brian on her end, so.
Both of them, or we can't hear either of you.
good idea. Okay, we giving up?
No, it is, it's not anything with me.
You could call into the Zoom meeting.
Yeah. I think that Bola's going to call Bess, and then maybe Bess could conference in. So if you get a phone call, that's Bola calling you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Go.
Ryan looks like he's muted.
turn off your audio.
Yeah, I'm muted.
Okay, we're ready. Brian, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, I think what I'll do is, start just with a brief description of what we're talking about here. So with the passage of Prop S, I'll do this in chronological order. We're going to keep the OMCI program in place through the end of calendar 2024. So we will also collect revenues to the end of calendar 2024. At that time, we'll switch over to Prop S. The way that looks different for 2025, your residential customers will no longer pay the property tax associated with the OMCIs, and that is both real estate and personal property. They will now start paying on their property tax the charge that's associated with Prop S. For almost all residents, it's going to be almost exactly the same. They won't know a difference moving forward. For your non-residential customers who pay property tax, they will stop paying property tax, and they will start in January paying a monthly impervious area charge. There's a rate associated with that, but the best way to remember that number is $45 per month for every acre of paved or roofed area. So if you have a business on a 1 acre lot and it's all roof and all pavement, that'll cost you $45 per month. And again, for individual businesses, that's just going to depend on how their impervious area compares to the value, the assessed value of their property for tax purposes. They both have a municipal grant program. They're both different. The OMCI has a certain grant program, and a lot of it is driven by the value of the properties within the individual OMCIs. The Proposition S is based on population, so it's a little different. Those are the big changes. So with that in place, the one thing we agreed to do, like we did 5 years ago, was check with the municipalities in each OMCI to see if they would like to consider maintaining some level of the OMCI tax. And that's really what our first request is. We know there's a lot of municipalities have already told us they are not going to want anything else turned back on. They're comfortable with Proposition S. But we've also had some, especially in the Deer Creek watershed, that said we'd like to consider keeping the tax. So MSD is polling, first of all, to see if people are willing to have a discussion about maybe maintaining part of the OMCI tax. And it's going to result in a pretty long conversation. There's kind of two things that have to be determined. How much tax do you want left on? It doesn't have to be the whole thing. It can be the whole thing, 1/2, 1/3. That'll result from a discussion we have with all the municipalities located within each OMCI. The other thing is, what are the services? And these are some of the questions and answers we've given. It can be like it is now. It can be all grant money to the municipalities. It can be all MSD projects. That's something we'd have to work out, that if the municipalities and OMCI say we want to keep charging, we'd have to figure out what is the program that they would find acceptable. MSD will do the surveying. We've got time to do this. And what we'll do is we're looking for if we can come to a significant majority of the municipality who represent a significant majority of the residents in the area, then we'll recommend to our trustees that they leave that tax on at the same time the Prop S is going on. There are 61 total municipalities that counts as unincorporated St. Louis County throughout the area. There are 7 current OMCIs. Some municipalities reside in more than one OMCI. So I think I'll finish up to let questions come again. Our first step here is to find out who really wants to seriously consider supporting to MSD's board that we'd like for you to maintain a tax above the Prop S tax rate.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, any questions from anybody for Brian? Hey, Jeff.
I guess, my question is related to the amount of money that we do receive already for OMCI. I'd hate to receive any less than that moving forward. We have a significant amount of projects that we've identified, up to, $6 million potentially in stormwater issues that we've hired a consultant to help us identify within Brentwood. That's going to take us a while to address, and much of those projects are going to be at least assisted with what we had identified with the OMCI funding. So I guess my question is, I'm hesitant to not collect OMCI unless we feel the Prop S is going to provide us with at least the same amount of funding for those projects.
So I guess my response to that is, obviously we're distributing money on a different basis. Before, we had small taxing districts, OMCIs, of areas that were relatively the same, and we just went ahead and we divided up the money based on the revenues that were coming in. Being a district-wide program over 525 square miles, the right way in our minds, what got approved was to do this by population. So there will be a change. Some in OMCIs will see more, some will see less. Some are paying for the first time. With regard to Brentwood, under the OMCI, there's a $75,000 per year that would be available for Brentwood. Now, under Prop S. Under Prop S. Now, I would tell you, next year, there's still one more grant available under the OMCI program that becomes available after July 2024. At whatever the level is, I don't have it in front of me, whatever the level is, it's made available to you now. So there's one more of those left, even if we turn off the OMCIs.
I believe it's 121,000 right now.
Okay, so there'll be 121,000 available next year, and then after that, you will be $75,000 per year would be available under the base program. So I don't want to promise this, but there is this 10% pot to be spent on other things as decided by the region. One of the things that was mentioned, and it's $3.5 million per year, is to enhance the grant program if the region feels that's the right thing to do. That is absolutely not a promise, but that and floodplain buyouts were the two things that were mentioned when we put the program in place. MSD is going to seek input from the region. Probably right now, it looks like through the auspices of the Community League, where's the best place for those monies to go. So under the OMCI, there is no chance of it being higher than your current allocation. It has been mentioned during the process that there may be additional monies made available in the future, but that will take a regional discussion and agreement as to that's a good place to put this 10% of monies we have that are supposed to go to something else that the region thinks is important.
Nancy Sullivan, any other questions, or Jeff?
Brian and Bess, can you hear me if I talk here?
Yes.
Okay. Have you talked to other municipalities in our OMCI, and what kind of feedback have you heard, or are we early on the list?
So one of the only reasons we're on the phone with you is because we've heard from the other municipalities within your OMCI. So we strongly suspect that 6 of the 7 that currently collect are not going to want to keep collecting. The reason we're having this discussion is because of the municipalities in the Deer Creek OMCI. When we did this 5 years ago, we had 12 we were collecting from. 6 decided they didn't want it. 6 decided they did, and the big driver was Deer Creek. I suspect if there's one of the OMCIs that's going to stay turned on to some degree, it will be the Deer Creek OMCI, based on the input we've gotten so far. The question again is at what rate and with what service level?
And Brian, if you go back to that 5 years ago, I think it was 2020 when we did that, I believe Brentwood sent a resolution in saying they did not support OMCI at the time.
So I'm going to take your word for that. And even without that, though, there was significant support in the Deer Creek OMCI, and we did turn it on. Brentwood, it represents our numbers about 8.5% of the population in the Deer Creek OMCI. There was obviously, without Brentwood, there was significant support, and the board turned the OMCI back on.
Yeah, and it's highly likely that my memory is not correct, but I believe when that question came back, because there was a proposition that where people basically voted to turn off OMCI, and so we were respecting their vote on that was our position
Well, I think
in 2020.
there was, with the proposal, we're kind of at the same place. Our commitment to the public has been, if Prop S passes, MSD is going to start with not having the OMCIs turned on. The difference between now and 2016, because of the extra cash for capital that was developed in 2016, we spent that over a couple years, and then it ran out, and then we asked the question. So I'll change my statement. You're right. It was turned off for a couple years because of some accounting changes we were able to make with the 2016 vote. Here, we don't have that gap. We're asking right now from a starting point of we're not going to charge it to should we charge it or not. So it's a little bit the same. You just don't have 3 years of living without it.
Yeah, Jeff?
I'm curious, as far as Dan or Eric, on the projects that we were relying on OMCI funds to handle. I mean, how would not receiving as much money from those funds, how would that impact those projects moving forward? I mean, are you concerned that we're not going to be able to address some of these things?
That bid package 1, which is in, we were going to discuss, that was going to rely on OMCI. We're waiting for Gonzalez to develop the plans further along, get the construction budget together, and then we were going to submit it as an application to see if it would be approved. Because we had banked some of our money, we only spent it for that master plan. So we've got, you know, a few $100,000 sitting there that's ours to use for an approved project. So that's kind of where we wanted to use that money, that's being collected now and
But
through
that's
the end of the year.
only, how many projects out of the
That's
30
only representing like 6 out of, I forget how many dozen that were in that
There were
plan.
30-something, I
Yeah,
think,
it's just a
projects.
small fraction.
And then going forward, we would just do less with the less amount of money.
Correct.
would
Yeah,
just
if we're, yeah.
Fit it into whatever's available.
They get on our list.
Hey, Bess, I think you're breaking up if you're speaking to us.
No, sorry, I was talking to Brian.
Okay.
You're fine.
Right, and I think that's the concern that I have is, you know, if you took, if this bid package that we, you know, move forward with stays consistent, you know, you do the calculations, it's gonna take 34 years before we would even remotely address all of these projects at a minimum. You know, so I just want to be realistic about, you know, and if staff's comfortable with that and that's what long-term plan is, I think we just need to make sure that the residents understand that we've done this master plan, but it's not something that they should be able to expect right away because of funding.
Makes me feel so short all the time. I can't even see you guys because of the mic. I mean, the other thing to think about is it is the Recreation and Stormwater Fund. And so while, you know, I hate to say this in a public meeting because it's only going to hurt me, that is what the fund is for. So the idea is some of these projects in the future, we'd have to compare them against what other projects we have in the parks needs and throw them in together. So ultimately, that is the purpose of that fund, is to help out with stormwater stuff as well.
But if you want to do it in our lifetime, we will need assistance because there won't be enough money to do this within a reasonable time frame, even if we were to allocate 100,000, 200,000 from
Every
the
year.
Stormwater Parks Fund.
Yeah, Nancy?
Yeah, I do think that we've gone to this effort to do this plan, and I think there's some moderate expectation with residents and some higher expectation with the residents who are on that list that eventually some of those things will be addressed and in their lifetime or while they own their homes. And some of them are bad, some of them are public, just dangerous, not just for the homeowners, but for the neighborhood. So I guess I would sort of think that within some reason, whether it's keeping all the OMCI on or keeping a partial amount of it on so that then we have the same amount of money as we were getting before, it's still not enough, but we're not going down in the amount of money that we're getting from MSD to deal with water issues in Brentwood.
That's where I'm at too, is a figuring out a ratio where it doesn't have us receiving less potential funding or grants for the projects that we have. So my recommendation would be to keep OMCI on at some level that seems reasonable so that we're able to address some of these major stormwater issues.
Amend that OMCI be kept on. I don't think it was a unanimous vote to do it, but I'm looking, because there was a resolution back,
2020.
yes, there was a resolution to keep it on. And I'm searching, September 21, 2020, I'm searching for the meeting minutes to confirm how it passed or didn't pass.
I think it's a resolution not to turn it back on.
Motion to direct staff to submit a municipal certification of intent to participate form as required by October 15, 2020 to document the city of Brentwood will participate in the reimbursement program. Was there another resolution?
Maybe there was. That was back when the feedback was, so when they were looking to turn OMCI back on, they came and we actually had a town hall meeting. And then we submitted, I believe, again, it's a long time ago. I believe we submitted a resolution saying we did not support turning it back on at that time. But I think that resolution was agreement when the decision was made to go forward with it overall. But maybe that's where some forensic legislation.
Well, and I guess, could I ask a question of, our MSD friends, who actually I will call friends, and I will thank you now sort of publicly for coming to Ward 1 meeting before the vote on the two propositions and educating folks. It's wonderful. But if the OMCI is turned back on, how is the decision made about how the money is distributed? I mean, you mentioned, like it is now, grant money or MSD projects only. And so I think personally, my hope is that we would continue to get money so that we could do the projects that we've identified. If it's only going to be, if it's OMCI and it's only MSD projects in our OMCI, then I'm probably less enthusiastic about that, because our Brentwood's put a ton of money into stormwater issues, and I'm not sure that all the other municipalities in our OMCI have done that. And so, like, I want to be sure we get our fair share of what our residents are putting in as tax dollars.
Okay, two things. One, only because you had asked about previously the other Deer Creek municipalities, there are quite a few of those that have plans and have their own money into it. So I want to let you know you aren't by yourself with folks thinking that. I think one piece that you brought up is, I mentioned, is if the municipalities agree that they'd like them turned on, we're also going to look for a consensus as to what they pay for. So just going along the lines of what you're speaking about, one of the recommendation could come out to leave the tax as it is and make it all grant money. And if we did that, that would double your annual grant amount. MSD's not going to make that call. We're going to look to get consensus from the group, first of all, that decides to turn it on to some level, and then what they want to spend it on. So that is a possible outcome of the OMCI discussions in Deer Creek. I'm not promising. It could be leave it on the way it is and make the entire fund grants, which would double your annual grant amount from the OMCIs.
So then MSD wouldn't get your cut that you're taking now? Is that the?
No.
Okay.
No. Right now it's 50% for MSD projects in the OMCI, 50% for the municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
The municipalities can ask, and if their support, staff would be acceptable to recommend to the board that it be turned back on and be used only as grants to the municipalities, the full value.
If you can still see us, we're nodding.
Pardon me?
We kind of like that direction.
So I will tell you, on my side of this, having gone through it once, it's interesting. Watch the other municipalities finally figure out they need to talk to each other to figure out what they want. We're going to facilitate that by whatever OMCIs it looks like they say, hey, we want to do this. We almost know for sure we're going to be opening up our boardroom and having people sit and kind of hash our way through this to find out what the municipalities would find acceptable. In the end, I know you guys took a motion. All MSD is going to look for is a representative, however the municipalities decide to do it, to say this is what we would support. And then, again, as long as there's significant support, we would take it for consideration of our board. That is something that really needs to be brought up in the first place, is in the virtual meetings we're planning on having before the end of the month. We're trying to trim the list down a little bit by finding out who just doesn't want this at all. And the next step, there will be virtual meetings with everybody first, and that undoubtedly will then be followed up by meetings of some kind just with the municipalities in those OMCIs that would like to pursue this. We need to have this settled by spring of next year, so we've got plenty of time. I'd like to do it while I'm here, if it can go that fast, but we'll see.
So Bola, how would we do this? I mean, it seems like the question is, does Brentwood want to continue with OMCI or turn it back on? And then also, how do we want to, shape it if we do decide that we want to keep it? How would that be a board decision? Would that be a resolution? I mean, how do we make that decision?
They're not asking for a resolution, but there is a survey instrument in here that Dan would complete. So we're prepared to put it on the agenda for Monday night.
Okay.
And make a similar presentation to the board and kind of get a sense. Maybe we ask the questions that are in the survey or just general discussion so that Dan knows that he should, respond in a positive manner, right? That we want to keep it on.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
assume that you wanted to, but I can't make that call. It's the board's decision. But we can fill it out on your behalf as long as there's consensus with.
So as far as MSD is tonight concerned, we don't need to make any motions or action?
We just need to have a response by the 26th of
Okay,
April.
so,
Okay.
You need a motion to go to the board with this?
sure.
I'll make a motion to take this topic of Proposition S and OMCI to the Board of Aldermen for consideration.
Second.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Okay, is that, all right, thanks, Brian and Bess. Appreciate your time.
Okay, let us know if you want us to have a meeting or not, so when you're all done.
Okay, we will do.
Thank you.
Cavemen in Brentwood. Okay, now moving on to citizen comment. Item 3.
Nobody has their hand raised in the gallery.
Okay. We'll move in the report of committee chair and alderman. The only thing I have is, Eric, thanks everything for the opening day. You know, we've been talking about it a lot, but I thought it was very successful, so had a great day. So, Alderman Tice,
Ditto.
there you go. Alderman Gould?
Yes, I felt like the Parks Department did an amazing job. The entire department, they were hustling and making sure that there was, I don't know that we've had that many people come to especially that park. So it was new learnings for everybody, and I think they handled it really well. And then to follow that up with the Eclipse event was fantastic. So well done. I do have a few things that I'd like to bring up. One is the sidewalk on Russell Avenue at Ms. Keeney's property. Do we have a report or status update on the slope there?
Yes, there's, it's supposed to be 3-to-1 per the design on the drawings. And as you approach the driveway that's on the Russell side, not the driveway that's on the Collier side, it is not, it's greater, it's more than 33%. So that survey information was sent to TWM. TWM drew the plans and a request for information. It's actually RFI number 18 was sent, 2 of them from Gershenson. So Gershenson is asking the designer, thought it maybe had a copy of that, but at any rate, I know that they're asking them for information. Yeah, here it is. So it was just sent on April 9th. So it's RFI 18, as I said, requesting information regarding the finished slope at the Keeney property on Russell. So survey shots were taken from the back of sidewalk, and then you go up, and it should be 3-to-1, which would be 33%. In a couple instances, it's more than that 33%. So they're asking, you know, for further assistance on what to do.
Okay.
So we're waiting on TWM, and as soon as we get a response, we can put it in the weekly report, bring it back to the committee, and so on and so forth.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. And then while I have you here, I know that the discussion about no parking on Dorothy Avenue on the east side of the street, just north of the property at 2624 to the intersection of Florence, we talked about no parking signs there.
Right.
And I know that at Public Safety Committee that was brought up that maybe we could put some temporary signs until we are able to take it up for an official ordinance. Where do we stand with that?
The signs are up, but I know the one, if you're talking about like where Van Mark, the apartments that comes across at Dorothy, that intersection, they're up, but I know one of them isn't exactly where I wanted it. I want it a little bit further north. So basically, if you're looking at it as a T, it would be about 25 or so feet north and south of that intersection of the 2 roads.
Okay, and when did
And it
those
says
get,
no parking between signs.
when did those get put up?
If not late yesterday, early this morning.
Oh, okay, great. 'Cause-
Yeah.
so-
It wasn't for the 6, because I drove through and I saw somebody parked there. I'm like, oh, great, we
Yeah.
really do need to do something.
Yeah, there were people parking there, especially,
Because the next thing we want to do
With
is
the threat of
paint
towing
that
from the other-
yellow as well, just so it stands out. Because I mean, there were never signs there, and I mean, you're expecting someone to read a sign that's 2 foot by 18 inches, and
okay.
maybe they
well,
will, maybe they
great.
won't.
I mean, if it happened today, I, of course, didn't notice it, so,
Yeah, but I noticed the one when I drove through on my way here, it's not as far north as what I wanted, so it needs to move a little bit. So we'll try to do that tomorrow.
okay. I have a couple other items, but they're also part of the department report, so I'll save those. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Sullivan?
Echo your guys' comments regarding the opening of the playground. Good to see no kids pummel anybody during the ribbon cutting ceremony. No other report. Thank you.
Thanks, Sullivan. All right, we move into department reports. So we got Public Works first.
Regarding the first project, Russell Avenue STP, Missouri American still doing the water main relocation. You know, they were able to do a little bit at the north end so that they could reopen so the traffic could flow there at Brentwood Boulevard and get into the park. But on the south side of the railroad tracks, they still have an issue with the storm. So we're probably And then they're working on the bridge. So if you go by the bridge on the east side of the Brentwood Boulevard Bridge, the girders are up. They're going to be working on the deck if they're not already working on it. I know they already worked on the Metro parking lot, so that's coming along. The one thing we're waiting on, we had a meeting earlier this week, but we don't have a definitive date from Union Pacific Railroad. Whenever they need to work, they're actually going to close down that road entirely when they tear out that track area and rebuild it somehow, and then do their median and then the signals. So it's not going to be like for long periods of time. It's really just a weekend, get work done, and then maybe another weekend, just because it's such a heavily traveled road. But they have to notify the county and notify everybody, put up detours. It's not like they'll just decide tomorrow to do this.
So all of Brentwood will be closed?
That's what they've said.
Okay.
But they're going to try to do it on a weekend where it's less cumbersome, especially for motorists trying to get to work.
Okay.
So as soon as we know something, we'll push it out to the communications manager and get it out on social media. I've never seen it shut down entirely, but
Well, that'll be great. We'll sure everybody will go
I
through
mean,
the
Manchester
neighborhood.
was shut down, if you think about it that way. When the bridge was out,
Yeah.
no one coming across Hanley could go. And that
The
was-
bad old times, good times, all right.
And then switching gears to Manchester Road, I know that the TWM engineer went out there, they measured all the slopes, the tunnel pavers are fine, so we don't have any more issues there, so that can be closed. 2818 Breckenridge Industrial, that's the former Bowser House property, we'll eventually tear it down, we're still waiting on the FEMA approval, so as soon as we have the FEMA approval that it's a capital project that's acceptable to them, then we can put it in the county and advertise it and bring bids back to this committee. And then lastly, the street sweeper, we did borrow the Maplewood sweeper this week, and we did the streets that weren't done the last time, which would basically be from Litzinger North and Brentwood Boulevard to the west. So that little quadrant, which would also include like your major thoroughfares in Brentwood Forest. So I know Wrenwood, Swallow, Eager, High School, those particular streets. And then, you know, Pine, White, any of those on the west side of town. And then today, you know, because we'd finished all those actually yesterday, we just went through the heavier areas. So like Dorothy, Eulalie, Rosalie, a couple other streets, you know, just to hit it again before we return it. So we cleaned it up, and if it didn't get returned today, it'll be first thing in the morning. And that's it.
Any questions for Dan? All right, thanks, Dan.
No.
Oh,
I think we both.
sorry. Don't go anywhere, Dan.
Okay, so street sweeper, looks great, so thank you. And I know that we're hoping to get one with the FEMA reimbursement, but that's not gonna be for a while. So what are the plans to street sweep again? Because pollen's coming down, I think we have a lot of gumballs, it's gonna get dirty again.
Yeah, we were hoping we could go maybe like a 4-week period and then either borrow or rent.
That's great,
'cause
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if we could get on that schedule, that'd be great, because it seems like
Yeah, we used to
had
do it
been
every
since the
week,
fall, and it
yeah.
was horrible.
Yeah, and that's what took us longer. Like usually you could, you know, do everything in a week, you know, all streets, but because it was heavy, you know, you had leaves, gumballs, all that sort of thing.
And it's got to be good for our drainage if we keep the gumballs and leaves, or gumballs and pollen up this time of year. So that's good. Okay, thank you.
Kind of extension of that question. I thought we had a smaller vehicle that had a broom on it or something that could be used for sort of local cleanup.
We do for spot cleanup. It's
Spot
a
cleanup.
broom that fits on a skid steer. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's, I don't know, maybe a little bit wider than this podium
Okay.
lectern, you know,
Yeah.
it's a broom that it can actually pick stuff up.
Because I'm wondering if, because you know, there's certain areas of our city that probably can go for 5, 6 weeks without a cleanup, but there's other areas that seem to collect a lot of, especially in rain events, when the gumballs start to collect down in, and then you've got a street that's full of them again. I know Litzinger on the east side, only because I travel it every day, you know, is full of gumballs that have been obviously washed along again.
That's what I saw, like south of Litzinger on the Dorothy side of the street, like
Yeah.
east side of Dorothy. When I drove through before, there was nothing. When I drove through yesterday, I saw
It's full of it.
pockets of it. So I asked one of our guys, is like, hey, when you're driving, make sure you go back up and down Dorothy to pick up those pockets.
Yeah, so I just wonder if too, in the meantime, if we can
do a MyGov
identify,
ticket, yeah.
you know, some localized areas, can that be deployed to do
It can.
sort of a small cleanup?
Yeah, the easiest is just to do a MyGov ticket. Like there actually, in the drop down, you can actually pick street sweeping. And then if you gave us an address, then we could just pinpoint it and use a smaller machine.
Okay, good to know.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Dan. All right, Eric. Parks and Rec.
All right, first and foremost, just put in my weekly report, which I think you guys saw, just a couple things about the grand opening. We estimated about 2,000, 2,500 people there. It wasn't we didn't count person by person, but we had a decent crowd. And honestly, we saw camera footage the rest of the day. It was packed all the way through, probably 6:30. Kind of start going home for dinner. And then some of the social media insight stuff, I think it's been kind of interesting to see that as well. 200 people, 200 new followers on an Instagram account over the weekend, last weekend, just from the other stuff. So the Explorer STL Parks was at the playground opening, did a video, and it already has over 1 million views. Two in the Lou had 20,000. Play STL has 20,000 views. St. Louis Moms has 12,000 views. And then David Lemon Realtor, who's a very interesting account, has 50,000 on his playground. So I think we're starting to see a lot of social media input or social media interest as well. But even like Great Rivers Greenway had a great post on their Facebook page, and they got a lot of comments and things like that. So in case we didn't realize, I think people like the park, which is good. And we're starting to see people basically talking about coming from out of town, whether it's St. Charles County, Arkansas, those type of things. Like people are starting to see it and want to come. So, and then we took a look at the Eco Counter. And again, we've talked about this before. It is the north section of the park, right after the Sycamore Trail. And so Saturday we saw 1,972 clicks on the Eco Counter, 1,600 on Sunday, and another almost 1,000 on Monday. So that's up from the 270 we were averaging. And so we're going to kind of continue to kind of track that. So, and then kind of Brentwood operations, and what we say is that we continue to evaluate what's going on in the park, especially with opening the playground. I mean, our list is about 3 pages long. Bola yells at me that sometimes I can't enjoy things, which is true. My wife will say that too. But, I think the idea is we see stuff already and that we're looking at it, but we're also trying to be cognizant of the fact that we're still very early on. And so we don't want it to jump early to conclusions, but we do want to make sure that we're doing things properly. And so one of the first things we saw is we already see multiple organizations when you use the park advertising that their programs, events are in the park, and we don't know about it. So one's like Moving to Music, STL. In fact, I think that was on the community Facebook page. Someone showed me. It's like, oh, we have this great opportunity in the new Brentwood Park, which is great. But we're going to have discussions with Kevin and the attorney and Bola about how we handle those type of things. So that will be coming very shortly. And then the other thing, which again, is not a surprise and something we've talked about before and something we've been thinking about for a long time, is parking. Parking is going to be an issue for a long time. And so we looked at multiple things. We looked at, what we could do. And we know that hopefully with redevelopment, that surface lot may come, but we don't know when that may happen. And so we're trying to be proactive. And so what we did is, I think if this pops up, good, there's different things we've talked about internally and just some options to throw out there for you guys today. See if there's any consideration, discussion, talk about. But the first are these 2 lots on the other side of Manchester. So those lots are right now just grass lots. We can do a curb cut off of Manchester or a curb cut off of Dorothy for the northern lot. We probably have to talk to MoDOT about those type of things. Dan reminds me of that. I have a communication to Craig because one of the things I saw, Alderman Gould, you brought up is St. Louis County Property Viewer still shows that as MoDOT, and I thought they have transferred those properties over to us. That not happened yet, so we have to be cognizant of that for a little bit. But I did talk to, just again, as we're trying to think about this, McConnell Associates, if you know, the question, Dan, did McConnell do the crack ceiling for the city? Okay. So that was something, someone asked that, and so, but McConnell Associates have done a lot of work in streets and things like that, so we just went out and asked them to get a quick bid, just an estimate, so I could throw it to you guys. The north lot, they think they can get 30 total spots, because it's a little bit smaller, it's 12,000 square feet. They have 3-inch asphalt, 6-inch rock. Again, this is just, want to get you guys information, was $96,000. The south lot, which is the bigger lot, which is 27,000 square feet, $198,000. So it's really somewhere in that $7 to $8 per square foot range. Again, those are very rough estimates. There'd have to be other things such as engineering, drawings, things like that, that we'd have to consider if we did anything. So those are kind of those two. We also, the other obvious answer is across the street on Russell. We do have the two lots, I call them Hilldale West and Hilldale East, basically on both sides of that, and could we do something? And that is something we've actually talked to SWT to consider in the master plan, but maybe we don't have to wait if we want to do something sooner rather than later. The Hilldale West is about 12,000 square feet, which would be about $99,000. Again, just rough order magnitude based on what McConnell gave us. Hilldale East, a little bit smaller, 10,000, be about $80,000 again, if you look at that. So those are kind of, again, certain things we could do. And then as much as we don't want to do something like this, another good, very possible option could be this kind of green space between north of Brazos from Brentwood Boulevard to the entrance. So I don't have my little cursor, but that little area right up there. Right now, you see what's in there. It's that landscape bed, what's in there now. And you know, based on Google Earth, things like that, it looks to be around 22,000 to 23,000 square feet. It could be a location if we wanted to look at something temporary or something even more permanent. That is a location that fits with the park because it's right there. It's across the street. And we can do a couple things. We can do a couple things with any of this stuff. You know, I've been to many parks where you have the main parking lot and then they have a grass overflow parking. So we could do a curb cut and then just set up sort of overflow parking over there. If we want to do something more permanent, we could do that. So again, we have started thinking about stuff. We are not concerned, concerned, probably a good word. We have a lot of stuff coming up. We budgeted $10,000 for pavilion rentals this year, not knowing exactly. We did this last June before, you know, we continue to see how things played out. We did that early on, didn't know how the new event pavilion would do because that was still even before we opened, right when we opened, so we weren't sure how that was going to do, weren't sure what we're going to do with the playground. We have made more revenue in both the playground pavilion and the event pavilion than what we budgeted for all of our pavilions. So right now, $13,000 in that playground pavilion, 72 bookings, and almost $20,000 for 38 bookings for the event pavilion. So it's good stuff. We're very excited about it, but we want to be cognizant of thoughts about parking. So stop there because I figured it's a good stopping point to talk.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to not let this linger. These, you know, we have cars lined up all the way down Brazos. We've got, you know, I'm sure the folks that live just north of the playground and people are going to park along those streets, whether it's permitted or not. And then, you know, as a Ward 3 alderman, I'm sure they're going to be at our ward meeting complaining. We have some property owners that are tow happy, that cause issues, and we don't want that to reflect on the city of Brentwood or this great resource. I like the idea of the properties right off of Manchester. I think what we saw is a lot of people trying to access the park from Manchester Road area. That's why you had people parking on Dorothy and then walking under the tunnel. The tunnel's fantastic. A way to have I'd consider it a trailhead to GRG. And so I think either of those lots, even from a master vision for the area, the redevelopment area, they seem to fit as some sort of a lot regardless. So I'm encouraged, though, if we could consider not paving them. I would like to see if we could look into permeable structure that could either be grass or gravel or something that would allow water, because, you know, the last thing we want to do is to create a condition of water runoff. So I think it would go in concert with all the other efforts that we've done to look into a permeable option.
This at the management team meeting, if Dan had ideas on how we could create a sustainable, do you want to come talk about it? A sustainable parking lot there, similar to what you just said.
In the box.
Go to them, Mike.
Yeah, make sure you're at the mic.
True Grid Pro. Feel like an infomercial. So this is the 1 inch, this is the light, so this is more for residential. This is what I had proposed for Mary Kay. So these male and female tabs lock together. You can create rows of these, and then you can take a saw and cut these to the shape that you want. I've actually got it upside down. So it actually goes this way, because once you put it together, then you're able to fill these different hollowed out areas. You can leave it empty if you wanted to, but it's certainly stronger if you can backfill this. So this would be on some sort of granular backfill to allow drainage. You can put colored rock in here, or you can fill it with dirt and then put sod over it. So this is the light. That can take pretty much anything, you know, residential, you know, from a Suburban to like an Amazon truck. This is the more robust. It's 1.8 inches thick. So this is the Pro versus the light. One of the advantages of this is if you created like a surface lot, you can buy these little PVC caps to put in here and actually create like parking stripes. So you can make stalls, you know, 9 foot, 10 foot, whatever you want to do. So that's one neat little option that this has that the other doesn't. So this would be like your surface parking lot. So if you were to pick somewhere, you know, this is just one option. I mean, you could do permeable pavers, but these squares are $11, $12 for like a 2 foot by 2 foot square. You know, that's just a material. We would still have to provide the rock and the labor, you know, but it's something staff could put in versus contracting it out.
Yeah, and as a, are those easier to remove later if you know,
They
the
are,
lot
'cause you
becomes
could just-
repurposed for something else,
Yeah.
than like pavers?
Yeah, backhoe could just dig this up and just roll the bucket, and you just peel these up and unfasten them, or just take a saw and cut them, whatever you wanted to do. I don't know how difficult they are to break apart once they're filled. You know,
right.
it's something you'd have to use a machine to try to pull apart, I'm pretty sure of. But again, these are made, you know, it actually is eco-friendly, it's sustainable. This is 100% recycled high-density polyethylene. They're made in America. They're, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
100% flow through.
You know, I'd hate to just start paving everything. So I like the idea of something that feels, you know, more natural and then allows for the ability to expand parking when we need it, because we don't need it all the time. But so anyway, I knew you had comments.
So I'll echo that, and I really have a problem even talking about spending $300,000 to pave 2 lots along Manchester that we hope are going to be redeveloped. Like, like, I will not support that. I know we need the parking, but I don't want to spend that money on paving. So this looks like a great option. I think doing something like that on Hillvale, which is not, like, we can't get across, it's dangerous to get across Brentwood Boulevard right now, but soon that will be a great way to get across, and that has been, that would be useful for that park as well. And Brentwood Days, there are just a lot of, that's been used for parking for a long time. And I honestly, like, even that little, it's not, while not as pretty coming into the park, the people are directed into the park, and taking some of that land right there and using some permeable kind of solution seems to be a good way to go, because it's, I mean, it's sort of like you go 10 a.m. I was at the vet the other morning, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to drive by the parking lot. And they were full in the park. It was 10:15, full in the parking lot, double parked all in the parking lot, all the way up Brazil. And it was Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. So this is just, it's going to be a mess.
Good problem to have, but we need to solve it soon.
Soon, yes. But paving along Manchester is just not something
Internally,
I support.
and just don't get me wrong, the only reason I got McConnell to give us a quote was to give you guys an idea of what the cost would be. And I'm a parks guy, I would prefer to do permeable pavers anyway. You know, I think that the lots on Manchester are a good temporary location as we figure out what's going on with redevelopment. If there's a thought that there's a more permanent solution closer to the park, I do think it's this one right here. And we could, I mean, again, depending on Dan, we'll probably do it in a week or two, but you can do a curb cut, put up a sign, say park overflow parking, let them park on grass at least for a little bit till we figure out what we can do. And if we even want to do something a little bit more permanent, even if it's with that or something else, and I mean, we still have 2 contractors on site that we could, Jacobs to do a design, and we could do a bid alternate for either Gershenson, that's really kind of part of their project, or even Plocker, who's finishing up. Again, we're just trying to provide as much information for you guys to kind of consider, because like you, we feel like parking is going to be an issue pretty quickly.
I think we talked to Whitney, and I don't believe the code would allow us to have permanent parking on grass. So we definitely would need to look at some of the options that Dan talked about. So what is the direction?
Well, Sullivan, do you have any questions? I mean, that was kind of my question. I mean, so not permanent, but like temporary, because on the south side of Manchester, there is a curb cut already, right? So you could drive a car onto that grass right now. Is that a good temporary, not a permanent solution? Just right now, throw a sign up and say overflow parking right now.
Own that? I
Yes.
mean, it sounds
Well,
like we don't
the
own
state
that.
does.
You can talk to MoDOT and share with them what we intend to do, and see whether we can speed up them turning over the property to the city, or at least allowing the city to start to use it until they're able to complete all their paperwork and make that happen.
Because my concern is, so we are in peak usage right now, right? This is going to normalize into some, you know, and Sullivan has a great point that when school gets out in the summer, it's probably going to go spike up again. But, you know, we're probably in a peak, and it's going to come down. We're going to understand in a month or two kind of more what this really looks like. But it seems like that month or two is the problem, right? We got to do something like now.
It's gonna be busy.
I know, I think,
Just gotta stay
I don't know
busy.
that we're gonna have
You're
a
probably right.
lull
Yeah.
much.
Right.
I mean, you know.
But these things are going to take time, and I think we got to do something now. I mean, can we temporarily park on the grass if we get okay from MoDOT on that one that has the curb cut, like right now? Can we put a sign out there?
We can ask. We'll ask
And
tomorrow.
then, if, sorry, I'm jumping right in, but if we do that, can we put a sign near our parking with like a little map that says, you know, go out of here, go on to Brentwood Boulevard, turn right on Manchester, and go left in this parking lot, because
Directional signs.
directional signs, because it's like once you're in at the parking lot, it's hard to get over to Manchester. Like if you knew to start at Manchester, that works, but
In my mind, if we do that, we could probably do something with a QR code that gets you even to a Google Map pin of that location, just say overflow parking, and send you there. I'd have to double check with Sophie, but I'm about 98% sure we could do something like that. The only thing, this curb cut here, I believe, and Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, is for this building, which we do not own. I don't know if anyone's in that building. I do know it basically you come in and then there's like a little bit of a curve. I went by there before the meeting to kind of get you that way. So maybe we'd have to talk to them about whether or not we can use that on the weekends for overflow parking and for events and things like that. We
Well-
are we are going to put another kind of social media post tomorrow saying, hey, thank you for coming to the park opening last weekend. Everything's been great. Blah, blah, blah. Don't forget, here are places you can park and track them to other places as well.
We did talk to the owner of the property that you alluded to earlier, and he too had an interesting experience on Saturday and on Monday, and we are expecting an application to come before P and Z because he now wants to fence off his entire property.
So, I mean, if you need a motion, I would make a motion to explore the potential of a curb cut. I don't even know what to call it, that little property that is near the park, for temporary parking on the grass. Yes, that little grassy knoll. And then explore installing a curb cut on Dorothy Avenue for the property at, sorry, I'm trying to get my, at Dorothy and Manchester, 2642 Dorothy Avenue. No, I'm sorry, not that. 8615 Manchester Road. And price out true grid parking structure for trailhead parking on that lot. And then discuss with MoDOT about, and the access for temporary grass parking for overflow at 8614 Manchester Road.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
And then I think we can take up the Hilldale maybe after we see what we're doing
Yeah.
here.
I would agree.
Do we, in terms of parking as an additional thing, do we need to do anything with no parking signs on Brazos or anything like that?
I believe that's coming up.
At
today.
public safety
Is that coming up?
already.
Okay.
Oh, it's
Public
public
safety.
safety.
Oh,
No, that's not our.
fantastic.
Not, yeah,
I love it when they
somebody
do.
else's committee.
Okay, great.
But yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I,
Sully's take that.
All right, anything else on the parking?
Nope.
Okay, anything else, Eric, that you
Yeah,
wanted to bring up?
one couple more things. The Manchester Road Tunnel, we had the rain event last Monday, and so we did see some water come down into the tunnel and some debris. So we looked at it as far as staffing and our staff as where we're seeing debris coming from. And what we're noticing is, if I think you can follow my cursor a little bit, most of the water when it comes down, I mean, I know Alderman Gould, you want to talk about this a little bit more too, but as it comes down, if it's flowing fast enough, if it's a high volume event, so it'll sometimes skip this and this drain, and then it flows basically right around this area here, and that is the mulch you're seeing getting into the tunnel. And then conversely, on the other side, it's not as bad, but it's this side that you're seeing basically the mulch being removed and pouring into the tunnel. So as that happens, what quickly happens is right away it clogs up all four of those drains at the bottom, which is why more water is getting in. So on our end, just to start with, we feel like doing a nice decorative rock around this area would help with that and keep that debris from moving in. On this side, the east side there, and the west side south. And so that's what we're going to start working on. That way we think water will flow a little bit better and get to the drains down at the tunnel and keep mulch from coming in there. As far as the other issue up top, I know Dan had a couple thoughts about the grading and whatnot, and Dan, I can't remember exactly what they are, so you might need to help me. But I know part of the issue is making sure if we do anything within this area, is making sure it remains ADA accessible, as that is a pathway. So that's the.
Yes, and I think that what we need to do is work with the property owner and, I mean, do we have full accessibility to do what we need to do? Or is that something we have to have permission from the property owner to do this?
I don't know. I mean, if you,
I don't know where his. I'm not really sure where one property begins and one ends. We can ask TWM because that would have been surveyed when they did the Van Mark extension through there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it should lie fully within the Van Mark Way, or I mean, the Rogers Parkway
Should
in my mind.
we maintain that?
So we should be able to maintain it, but what I'm seeing is just simply the water comes off of the entire surface lot there and comes down between those buildings, and then there's not just not enough of a gentle slope toward the center of that island so that it makes it to Dorothy Avenue. So almost all the water hits our path. And now it's starting to kind of create a little bit of erosion even at the path on the east side of the east corner of the path, right there. So I think if we can regrade, yep, that section there, if we can regrade that asphalt so that it keeps a little bit of a swale moving the water past the path and onto Dorothy, it will actually make it into that double inlet on Dorothy Avenue. And if it doesn't get caught there, it's going to get caught at the second double inlet right there. I would be willing to bet 99% of the water that runs down that path comes from the surface lot because it just doesn't make it to Dorothy. It seems to me a simple mill and overlay, just making sure that the swale is running away from the path a little bit, and I don't think it would change ADA at all. I don't think you'd even notice it, but when water's running in it, it would direct it to where it needs to go. So, I mean, I don't know what kind of, if you need direction or motion on that, to explore that. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that staff explores the potential of a mill and relaying of the asphalt in order to create a better runoff, water runoff from the surface lot onto Dorothy Avenue.
Second.
All right, any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I agree. I think that's what's happening.
that's all I have.
Okay,
now.
thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe Whitney's next.
The March monthly reports are included in your packet. We had 246 new permits and 789 inspections for the month. And I actually went back for January through March. There was a total of 690 permits. This represents a 22% increase over the same time period from last year. And for code enforcement, that we had 129 code enforcement cases in the same time period and represents a 74% increase over the same time last year. So the Planning and Zoning Commission met last night. They recommended approval of the Home Occupation Text Amendment, and so that will be forwarded to the Ways and Means Committee on April 30th, and then we would schedule it after that for Board of Aldermen. They also recommended approval with conditions of the McDonald's CUP modifications. So that will come to the Board of Aldermen on the May 20th for a public hearing. And H3 Studio made a brief presentation and discussion on preliminary recommendations for the Architectural Design Guidelines. They had met with the Sustainability Commission on March 25th. So now they met with P&Z, and then next week they will go to the Architectural Review Board for the residential component of the design guidelines discussion, preliminary discussion. And then they will also like to have a few meetings with the Board of Aldermen. So you're welcome to attend any of these, but they will want to have a few meetings just with you. Once they have a draft in place, we would also have a number of open houses for that review and discussion. And then they would also want to go back to all of the boards for additional consideration. So there's plenty of opportunity, is what I'm saying. So, and that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Whitney? Thanks, Whitney. Appreciate it. All right, Suscom.
Just real quick, during our March meeting, we had Kenneth from Ameren come out and discuss the Brentwood Fleet Electrification Study Report. He talked a lot about what cars could be feasible, what fleet vehicles could be feasible, and what they could be doing. They identified 33 technically feasible vehicles. So they kind of went through that report. I know Dan and I are still kind of going through that report. And more than anything else, we'll use that as we go into the budget process to start looking at, are there ways to turn maybe some of the fleet into electric vehicles. More than anything else, I wanted to give you guys the option or put the report in board docs so you had option or access to it as well.
Yeah, and I'll say about this report, I mean, I think it's a good start. It's a model that we can use for future decision making. I think right or wrong, there were some conservative assumptions in here that each car would have its own charger installed. And so when we get to, decisions, I think then we can say, okay, is that right? But I think it gives us a framework that we can get good cost benefit analysis when it's time to make decisions. So, okay, thanks, Eric. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All we have is meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Comments, questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Drone show.
Obviously, we talked about this last month, and I won't go over everything again, but we did reach out to the couple vendors who are a little bit higher, and then Firefly never got back to us, and then Sky Elements did say basically that, hey, we'll do a one-year contract at that 29.5. If we'll do, if you guys are okay with saying, doing the contract with 1 year with two options, so two optional 1 years, which obviously optional, we don't have to do it. And said, we feel confident if you guys see our show that you'll like it and you'll want to do it. And again, we can come back out next year, even if we do love it, and say, hey, it's great, but we're going to go back out to bid. So I feel like it's still a little bit more expensive than what we've done in the past. And so I can completely understand. But if we want to do a drone show, my recommendation would be to go with Sky Elements.
Any comments or questions for Eric? Looking for a motion?
Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the Sky Elements 1 year contract with a 2 year, or as presented, for $29,000 per year for a drone show for Brentwood Days. 29.5.
Yeah, 5.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Jeff?
And can you give us an update? I know you had talked about potentially finding or putting out some feelers. I know, that's not something that we'd have to decide on or find right away. You would presumably have a potential sponsor
We
up
have
until how long? When's the deadline for something like that?
I mean, we could go all the way up to the day before. Shouldn't say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
We need probably a few weeks, probably months, so they can make sure they have that data in there. I do have a few people in mind, so that we'll be talking to.
Okay. Yeah, because I think going with the folks that we trust, even though it is higher cost, it'll be a good test. But if we can find a sponsor, especially something like this is unique to drones, we couldn't do with as well with fireworks. So I think that helps if we can.
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, generator fuel tank replacement.
This item actually went to Ways and Means last week, and the reason why we're bringing it to you is just because it's underneath the Public Works Capital. So originally, whenever we were doing budgets last year, we had gotten a quote from CK Power, and that's the 15,230. So then whenever we put together a budget book, we inflated it a little bit, made it 16,000. So then whenever we got quotes this year from the same company, that's why you see this huge amount, this 25,338. So that's why we brought it to Ways and Means. It's money related. We have enough budget, since we're early in the year, to do this project, but just want to make you aware, we can do a CRA, we can get this work done, but it's, the price of the tank is about double. So this is the generator set that's behind the police station. It's used to run their whole command center whenever they lose power. The tank is underneath the current generator, so you have to have a crane, lift it up, take the old tank out, put a new tank down, and then tighten it all up and, fill it back with fuel. So right now it's a double-walled steel tank. The outer wall is thinned out, so that it's only got one wall, and then if it leaks out, there's no containment. It's however many tens of gallons of diesel that would leak out.
So Dan, do you need a motion, or is this just informational only?
I believe it's just informational only.
So once the Ways and Means.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Dan about this? Okay, thanks, Dan. Stormwater projects.
Stay put.
Yeah, why not?
Stormwater projects. So as we already talked about early on, in the meeting, Gonzalez is doing this bid package for bid package 1. So I believe it's at around 90% or so, because they're actually submitting it to MSD. I'm meeting with them next week. We'll go over it, see if there's any changes that are needed, incorporate MSD's comments, then we'll have a final bid package. So sometime this spring, we'll be able to bid this, see what the construction costs are, and then bring them back to this committee to approve it. So that would be these first 6 or so projects out of the gate. That was just more or less for information, just to let you know where we are, since we've been working on these for months.
Yeah, and this conversation about OMCI doesn't really affect this, because OMCI would stay in place, and we've been booking it, for the last couple of years.
Right,
so.
now that he's far enough along, I can submit the plans with the application to use my funds that are already built up to try to pay for this, basically reimbursing ourselves.
Okay.
We can still go out for construction. We budgeted, for doing this.
Okay, any questions for Dan? Okay, thanks for the information, Dan.
Yep.
Access path, Yorkshire Lane.
This particular one I worked on with Whitney, since it originated with a MyGov complaint about the condition of the wall and the fence. So I know code enforcement went out, looked at it, and it needs to be repaired. Well, actually replaced. It can't be repaired. It's just too far along. So instead of, I guess, the resident wants to know, would we be interested in taking it over? You basically take over the whole property, and then now you can put some sort of trailhead if you wanted to, but that would require us to then fix it. It is failing.
Nancy.
Okay, so I wish that Alderman O'Neill was still around, because
Yeah.
she and I talked about this, it's one of the first things she brought up. It is repeatedly comes up at our ward meetings, at the Ward 1 meetings. And I have the answer. The resident doesn't want to turn the money over. We didn't keep it when we sold Fraser School. I am one of the people who sort of shimmies down that hill. It's not safe. It is used by residents. Ward 1 and Ward 4 really only connect on a paved area on a street.
There maybe?
Well, that's not
there.
paved. It's
Yeah,
it's
a
mulch.
trail. Yes.
It's a mulch trail that is maintained by Brentwood Forest, but it's not the type of path that Brentwood usually has. The kids go in the neighborhood to go to school. It's a path that we should try to make. We should try to make this path and make it consistent with the rest of Brentwood, and I would love to see this happen.
Yeah, I support you there. I'm trying to remember, wasn't this replaced or just added a couple years ago? No? I swear I saw a bunch of construction going back and forth between there within the past 2 to 3 years.
Unless it was the house being built, but
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I support you in and getting that accessible, maybe a path through there of some sort, because it's just a muddy hill right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it's such a weird shaped, that little tang that goes on 6. I mean, do you think this, because you would have to do an ADA compliant, do you think we would be able to get enough of an easement on it that we could do that? I mean, it seems pretty easy to do if you have, some length along that
Right,
foot
yeah.
that sticks down.
When I looked at it out in the field, I'm like, well, the only way it would ever work is you're gonna need to survey it. The things that give me reservation are there's trees, so you're gonna damage them. There's Ameren has a riser on a pole that goes underground, which I put in the photos. I have no idea which way that underground conduit runs, what voltage it is. There's this manhole cover, which I'm assuming there's sewer somewhere there. We could do, it wouldn't cost anything to do like locates. We call it in, say, hey, we want to know what's here that's underground. And then you'd see painted marks of what's there. But you would still need to hire somebody to figure out what that slope is there, because I mean, there's at least a solid 8 feet of difference. I figured if you did any kind of trail, again, it has to meet ADA, so it's gonna be a switchback ramp and landings to come from high to low, low to high, whatever you wanna look at. Could it be done? Maybe, looking at it.
Not, I mean, a switchback would be
Just-
tough. I mean, if it's
Yeah.
a switchback, it would
Right.
switch right back. So, yeah.
Guys figure you're gonna have to kind of be like a billy goat and sashay your way back up the hill, because you can't just climb vertically,
Right.
from A to B, because it wouldn't meet ADA whatsoever.
But if you could get that length where the retaining wall is now, then you could have a gradual, I mean, maybe the switchback could do it in 2 or 3.
Yeah. The
As
wall
long as you
was the
could
other thing.
consume enough
I
of
bet
it.
there's only room for 2, would be
Yeah.
my guess.
When you take away the timber, I have no idea what's behind there. If they were just gravity locked together and maybe there's a few rusty pieces of rebar holding it. Because I'm like, what I don't want is to then have Yorkshire Lane Court, which is our street, to then have to try to rebuild because I've taken away the support.
Well, I fully support this, even if it's expensive. I mean,
I think it would
the
be, but-
walkability of our town is what makes it what it is. And this is, this connects 2 major neighborhoods. And I went out there today and I was too scared to even try and climb up it, so.
I do,
Right.
and
My
I've,
only
I've
chance was
trained
the
my
roots.
dog- I've trained my dogs. I'm like slow and I pull them back because I make sure there are no dogs in the other neighborhood before I go down the hill. But I mean, I probably twice a week I use it. It's slippery and it's dangerous, and I know what I'm doing, But it's lots. I'm not the only one who does that.
All right, so Dan, you're looking for a motion to proceed with feasibility, I guess, is that?
If that's what the committee desires, I can call some civil engineers and figure out what a proposal would be to try to make this a compliant area, but also repair the wall.
Do we need a motion to?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to direct Dan to do what Alderman Weggie just said.
Second.
Okay, any comments, questions? Yeah, Jeff?
And so I guess my question is, if we do take over any of these paths, we are required to make them ADA, is that right? Because I know there was some discussion on some of the other paths that we've had little connectors that there's no way to certainly make it fully ADA, but I think it was the one between
Bridgeport and White.
There's
That
no
one
way
is
we could
ADA
actually
compliant,
make,
yeah. Yeah, that had no real trail. It was just asphalt somebody kind of put on the ground. As soon as we took it all out, I mean, that was several hundred feet of improvement that we did, but we had TWM give us the survey marks, and they actually designed it, and then our guys did the rubberway there.
Right,
because
no,
it
but I think
allowed
it
you to
was,
flex.
it was ADA for that section, but if you go on the road.
Right, you're right,
If
on
you go on the
Bridgeport or
road and you
White,
go to
yeah,
any of the
yeah.
other paths, it's
Yeah.
ADA to no ADA, right? So
Right.
I guess the
Yes.
question is, if we do take over this and we have a path and it just is not feasible to make it ADA, where does that leave us?
I would defer to Terry Johnson, because I don't think you can do that. I think it has to be all-inclusive. If you're gonna do, where nothing exists now and you're putting in something brand new, I think it has to include.
And I think both ends of this are ADA compliant, so you're connecting, you're not leading somebody into a non-ADA.
Not like the
Right,
other.
it's not
Right.
like, it, yeah.
So I mean, I think, we definitely need to check feasibility and we need to
Yeah.
figure out what that's gonna
Yeah,
take.
Yorkshire does have sidewalks, to your point, and so does Swan Circle. So it's like, if you could fix what's in between them and make it compliant, I think you'd probably be okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions about this? All those in,
So this motion is just a feasibility study okay.
I think it's a conceptual design, right? I mean, at least feasibility and a potential design.
Well, and feasibility if the utilities are even, I mean, it may
Right.
just
Right,
be
because I
that-
thought first thing we have to do is locate the utilities and then, get an engineer on board. It's like, well, based on these utilities, what do you think could be built here? We do have engineering studies as part of the capital. It's like 20,000.
Okay,
Great.
so they were covered, all right.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Mary Kay Court?
We started to go over this, but I'll go a little bit more detail. So at the last meeting, we were asked to take a look at possible solutions. I actually went further back. I knew we had a file on this. So a long time ago, we looked at it and we thought about rubberway, just like we did with the sidewalk. We would like kind of choke down that circle a little bit and have like about a 3-foot inside track, so to speak, of rubberway. Not sure how long that would last if people drove over it because it'd constantly be flexing. A couple of times is probably fine. And then that got me to thinking about, well, what could we do that's more permanent? You could still reduce it. Instead of rubberway, you'd put permanent concrete, but that has a cost and then it's going to take longer as you tear out sections and put the new curb in. So that could be done. Right now it's like a 36-foot diameter. So if you throttle it down, you're going to add more concrete. It's going to become more impervious. So me personally, I don't like that as an engineer. I'd prefer something simpler that can get done. So that's when I contacted the vendor, these True Grids. So it would do the same kind of thing as the rubberway, but it's more robust and, you'd put rock underneath it. We could kind of make a cord on either side of the circle so that, create those little crescents and an area for people to drive off the edge if they had to drive off the edge. And that has thousands of pounds per square inch of strength and compression. So if you drove off, you're not going to leave a rut. We can either fill it with rock, but I'll probably just wind up putting dirt in and sod. That way parts can still cut it.
I am completely in favor of this recommendation. I think, this will work or it won't work. It doesn't cost that much money. And if it does work, then we have a solution for the other 9 circles or whatever that have this problem. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else and we haven't spent that much money. I'm not in favor of paving it just because it's a beautiful circle when it's not a muddy, hellhole. But it would restore it, and I think it's worth trying this experiment.
I agree. And how quickly are those accessible?
They're in stock. I actually drove out. They're in Fenton. This particular vendor is in Fenton, and I went there, and they've got permeable pavers, and they've got retaining wall blocks, and just pallets of stuff. So I was like, well, if I needed a few hundred of those, could you get them? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, you just bring your truck, load them up.
I think the other benefit of if we can move quickly on Mary Kay, we can test out the product and how easy it is to do, and then maybe apply it to potential temporary or permanent parking solutions for our park. So
Yeah.
Make a motion to move forward with the recommendation of installing True Grid paver grid system on Mary Kay Court.
Second.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for looking into that. All right, we did OMCI. We're moving 9A to closed session. So we're on the 9B, design build trail services.
Hard to leave. Yes, so what we did in this instance on the design build trail services, in your packet is the RFQ. So we solicited, we sent it out in the county and put it on the website, sent it to several different firms. We did get 2 responses back. Staff evaluated the RFQ submittals. So of the 2 that we received, we had one from Castle, another one from Gershenson, who partnered with HR Green. And of the scoring, Castle edged out Gershenson by 6 points. So both are really qualified. Both have done this sort of work. If you recall, Castle did the Wind Trail like north of Litzinger just last year. Gershenson's done a lot for like city of Maryland Heights, Creve Coeur, GRG. They've had a lot of working along the Merrimack River and other areas. So I don't think you'd go wrong with either of these 2. So after evaluation, like I said, the point system, Castle edged them out, so that was why the recommendation was for Castle.
Yeah, Nancy.
I'll make a motion to support the RFQ selection of Castle Contracting for design build services to repair the damaged trail section near Hanley Park.
Second.
Comments? I will say, Castle did a great job on Lee Wind Trail. I've heard nothing but positive feedback from residents, and so happy to see them. Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great.
Thank you for staying the hour and a half.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have put you up front, too. Okay, so this is weird, but we have a closed session pursuant to RSMO 61021.
Motion to go into closed session pursuant to RSMO 610.21.
And adjourn from there.
0211.
0211, and adjourn from there.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Okay, thanks. So we go into the room and everything? Oh, man.